Welcome, welcome. We have Kenny Jahng. Kenny is a prolific writer. I mean, I read his stuff. I found website after website after website that Kenny just writes. So and I can tell, right, if you have a lot of ideas, he's trying to get it out because I can tell that he has a lot of ideas and he has a lot to say. But yeah, he's a prolific writer. He's a content marketing advisor and communication strategist. He helps nonprofits, cause-driven and faith-based organizations and churches. He's the editor-in-chief for Church Tech Today, which I think he wrote like 170 articles on just one site. And he's also the founder of AI for Church Leaders, where he helps, and clearly you can tell he's very tech savvy. And he's been consistently advocating for church and tech adoption. And he's been helping the church adopt tech even pre-AI, but now more recently with AI, he's picking that up and running and being one of the voices saying, hey, let's not be scared of it, let's lean into it. And that's where the friction is, I would imagine. That's why he's here. We want to hear from the front lines, what's the fear, what's all of that, and how he overcomes that, what's the conversations he has. That's what Kenny does. But Kenny, why don't you tell us who you are, where you're from, a little bit about you?
Yeah, I think an easy way to think of all the things that I have my hands in is as a ministry entrepreneur. I have a friend who recently shared that that's how you should explain yourself, because there are so many ideas in so many different places that I'd love to explore. But basically, I've built a strategic advisory firm for larger ministries and nonprofits, and we do a lot of things in terms of audience engagement and movement dynamics with these organizations. And then on the church side, it's mostly resourcing, trying to find these problems as an entrepreneur, these opportunities, and then either convening, aggregating, or building the resources to help them. So whether it is AI, and so we have a whole training platform and monthly workshops, and I speak across the country and that kind of stuff. But we also have other types of things for pastors and church staff. Like we just held a church finance and stewardship summit. Last month, we had a mental health education for church leaders summit. And so there's tons of things that we're doing. I think it's an exciting time right now to be able to be a church leader, because you have access to so many tools and best practices, and there's so many resources out there to pull together and be a leader, to be a herald for the gospel.
Hey, since we're talking about AI in church, worshipteam.ai is a platform and a community. Worship team leaders, when you build your set list, you can build it much faster. AI takes care of all the current inefficiencies and the grunt work. And also, when you are done building your set list, it will surface themes from your set list and then complementary Bible verses. So you and your whole team have these extra things to read that are relevant to your set list. And when you show up on Sunday morning, you're not just skill ready, but you're also heart ready. Churches, if you want to find musicians to fill in on a Sunday morning, then just go to worshipteam.ai, enter your zip code, and just search for musicians in your zip code. You can also drill down to specific instruments or roles. Musicians, if you want to be found, then just check a box saying, I'm open to helping my local church, and then you will show up when churches search for you. But when you do that, then you have the opportunity to create a profile page and upload like an intro reel, who you are. You can talk like this, but much clearer. Record yourself playing a song. That's not copyrighted, obviously, but maybe sections of it, but show your skill at least, maybe something generic. And then apart from that, you can also connect with the local worship leaders. You can think of it as Twitter without the politics, and also think of it as LinkedIn, but without all the chest beating and posts like, follow me for 5 tips for success, and I'll send you the PDF, right? But instead of that, like, how can we edify the church? How can we edify the church body at large, in our zip code, in our street, and in our city, and even across the world? Because I hope people from around the world will sign up, right? And use it as a platform that's very focused, without being distracted on all the things that X and LinkedIn has to offer. So take all those networking factors and also add in the practice feature. That's what worshipteam.ai is. It's free to sign up for everybody. Only the practice part and the setlist part there's a subscription fee to that, but everything else is free. Sign up, check it out, let me know. Back to Kenny. Absolutely. I love that definition. It clearly defines you. So you have a friend who knows you really well, whoever gave you the definition of what you do. So how long have you been how long have you been? I know church tech today is kind of like a pre-AI, and you have a history of this. So when do you start? What was the first thing that was like a tech and mission, the marriage? When was that the first time it happened?
I think that's been early on. So let's rewind. I used to be in the marketplace, secular job, working for Fortune 500 company. I've been a partner in a dot-com incubator. So the tech was there. In the past, I also worked in an ad agency, both in some enterprise type of companies, but also representing software, enterprise software, technology, etc. So there's always been a tech route. And then I would say the shift has been when I went to seminary. So back in 2009 through 2011, I went to Princeton Seminary for my master's in divinity, which is, the general purpose degree for pastors and church leaders. And so since then, all of my work and focus naturally has shifted toward cause-driven, faith-driven type of projects and solutions. And so I would say over the last 15 years or so has
Wow.
been a steady march toward how do we help the church leader that's in the trenches, that is burdened with so much today. The job responsibilities of pastor today is so much harder to do than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And you have limited resources. And so that's the burden I see for the pastor, and how do we actually help them? And I've worked in a church, been on staff at a church and growing church, and seeing the pressures and the tensions and the demands of
Yeah.
leading in ministry today is quite hard. And a lot of times it's better to do it together with others that are cheering you on, that are
Yeah.
helping and supporting you and really encouraging you through that path.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you kind of were in the trenches yourself, and you kind of solve the problems.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best marriage, right? Solving the
Yes.
own, you understand the pain better, and a little bit of a selfish aspect. Like I find that in myself as well. I want to just solve my own problems, but there's a wider application to this. That's amazing. So, did you were you always like East Coast, or do you have any West Coast, Silicon Valley?
No, always on the East
Really?
Coast, on the tech corridor, the New York, Boston tech corridor. We also, like, again, when I was working in tech, we had, offices in Miami, in
Yeah,
Ireland, in Boston, and New York.
yeah,
And so, but never on the West Coast. West Coast is a different country. It's a different
yeah,
culture, different.
yeah.
But yeah, always on, the Silicon Alley side of things here on the East Coast.
Silicon. I've never heard of Silicon Alley. That's hilarious. Awesome. So like I said, I want to keep this snappy. What's the state before we begin? Are there any? What's the state of AI for churches? Are there people developing their own large language models? Or do churches do? Is there any organization focused on that? We all. Do you know of anything like that? If somebody's doing their own training for ministry and churches,
Absolutely. Yeah. So
really?
the first thing I would point you to is one of the roles I serve is with an organization called Exponential. And Exponential has a pioneering innovation arm called Exponential Next. And I serve as the director of AI Next for Exponential. And we do a annual survey called the State of AI in the Church. I can give you the links for the readers to get access to the research. We're doing another one this next year, so anyone that would participate, we would love it. We basically have, statistically significant, or what do they say? It's the results have statistical confidence of 95% plus or minus 5%, et cetera. We've got dozens, you know, tons of roles that we've surveyed: lead pastor, the worship experience pastor, small groups, communications, right? All the roles in the church, all the sizes of the church, the generations, gender, and denominations. I think there's over 20 denominations that have participated. And what's been interesting is to see the shift of how the posture of the church leader has actually shifted toward AI so quickly, because typically we see that church leaders lag in tech adoption. But today in 2025, 91% of respondents said that they are for the use of AI in ministry to some degree.
95,
Yeah, 91%, 91,
91. That's
and
still high.
only 9% are fully against it. And so that number was much larger last year of people who were fully against using AI of any sort. But now it's reduced to 9%. And so that shift is probably going to increase into the 2026 survey, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And 65% of church leaders are now seeing AI as a neutral tool. It's not fear-based, it's not evil, it's not inherently dangerous. And 46% of the leaders that responded in the survey said they're optimistic and learning to use AI tools in ministry right now. We're not over the 50% mark yet,
yeah,
but 25% of the audience is using tools daily at this point. That's a big shift.
yeah. That is. Considering how recent AI has been accessible
Yes.
to the lay people, even
Yes.
what, like maybe 3 years, maybe less, maybe 3 years. I think mainstream.
Yes.
That's a pretty big shift. Um, what where do you think they use which parts of the church seem, because the church is so much, right? There's worship, there's administrative works. Is it all bundled into one, or do you find like sections of the church, or the type of role that's more easily leans towards AI, while as one part of the church is like, no, I don't want AI. Is there a split like that, or do you see it as a whole?
No, I think it's across the board, and within each lane or each ministry front, let's say, I think you see the smattering of responses of whether they're AI leaning into it full speed ahead or they're hesitant to use it. You're seeing that spectrum across the board, regardless of the
No way.
function of their work. And so I think there are some lanes that are a little bit more cautious than others. So, for example, um, discipleship, you're seeing a much more forward-leaning posture. They're exploring. They want to see how you can personalize discipleship pathways, etc. Counseling is a little bit more hesitant, right? Which makes sense intuitively, that people don't want to see that happen. Although Harvard Business Review just came out with a study that said the number one use of ChatGPT is therapy and personal companionship. And so the secular public is looking at AI tools for these reasons, and yet church leaders are hesitant to even explore how it might be stewarded well in that process. And so it's interesting to see how different places. But in general, people are seeing AI as, wow, how might we use this in our workflows?
Yeah. Yeah, the therapy one was a bit strange for me as well initially, till a friend of mine formed his startup maybe a year or so ago, and recently, and has been driving up a ton of interest, and I think he's recently funded even. So it was, but I don't think they call it therapy. Maybe for, I think it's called something else, but maybe not therapy. But that's, I would assume the way, and before I started this conversation, I was trying to, because I had some conversations with some other leaders in the church, worship leaders, and who seemed more hesitant towards AI. So I was trying to figure out, maybe there's certain things that are more 60% heart and 40% mind. Those kinds of roles are more hesitant because they want to keep the heart, like worship.
Well, I think it comes down to identity, Conrad,
Oh,
at the
really?
end of the day. Like, where it threatens your identity in your work right now is where people are hesitant. So, for example, in the worship, right now, you can use tools like Suno that
Yeah,
produce amazing music and might I dare say, more on key, proper tone than the
perfection.
average volunteer or even paid worship leaders on stage on a Sunday. And you have AI bands now that have broken into the Billboard 100 that people thought was just not possible before, that are complete AI bands. Spotify, there are bands that have been revealed that are completely AI produced, and they've amassed millions of followers and streams. And so I think those types of places where that's a threat to someone's identity. If you are a worship leader that either composes or leads music,
Sure.
the fact that you could be completely replaced by AI
Yeah,
is something that it's reasonable, but I think it's unreasonable to have a binary approach and say, no, we cannot use it. It's against the rules, against the law. How do we make sanctions so that there's no AI in worship music going forward?
yeah, yeah. I have to say that, I'm being a musician as well,
Yeah.
and being on a worship team, I'm cautious about how much of impact, how much is heart and how much is just grunt work, right? And as how much of it is just efficiency solving as opposed to heart solving issues, right? I'm always cautious about that balance, and I think it's valid, and I that's where the friction for me arises. And I think it's good. I think it's good to not buy in and jump in from a heart perspective 100%. So what's the so when you step into a church, and I assume most of these are mid to large churches, right?
No, I would say the smaller churches are the ones that would
No
benefit the most
way.
from integration of some AI, because AI, the first rung is to scale your productivity, your effectiveness, and it basically multiplies what you can do at the keyboard. And so I think the sweet spot actually is a smaller church than the larger church. Now, the larger churches are adopting them in much more creative ways, and in ways that are have more automation and do other things, fancy stuff. But at the very, very basic level, I think let's just forget about all these fancy tools. Just ChatGPT is something that it will super turbocharge any ministry at any level, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's because it's a large language model. It's based on language. And so, what role in your church, whether it's staff or volunteer, uses language in their work? And it's pretty much all of your seats around the table use language in
Yeah.
your role. And that's how it started, right? It's a large language model. But now that it's multimodal and that it can use audio and
Yeah.
video and
Yeah.
text and spit back and forth. I think this is one of those things where um, we're at the very beginning of the impact that it has on all of the ministry work
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. I'm definitely noticing. I'm definitely noticing a lot of churches doing. It's helping the marketing for sure. A lot of reels, a lot of
Yeah,
using apps like Opus.
yeah.
Definitely, and I'm all for that. I think that is definitely scaling as opposed to one video editor pushing out a reel a day. It's what are the biggest surprises you find? Oh, they've been missing out on that AIs can help their inefficiencies.
I think it's a mindset thing. I think one of the biggest aha moments has been where their preconceived notions of what AI is and what it offers is very different than the experience. If I get you to sit down at the keyboard and start to interact with AI, they're finding completely different ways to relate to it than they had in their preconceived notions. So conversational AI is also something that really changes the game. And so in workshops and in tutoring, one of the things that I'll do is I'll say, pull out your phone and just dial 1-800 ChatGPT. You can actually call ChatGPT and have a conversation. You don't need an account. You don't need a credit card. You can just start talking to ChatGPT just like you would if you downloaded the mobile phone app and triggered voice mode. That interaction completely changes the game for most people. And
Yeah.
and then it just starts to trigger, what else could I do with this? How might
Yeah.
I use this in elsewhere? And I think the other tip is, don't start with trying to figure out how to use AI at work. We try to usually find in our tutoring and our mentoring classes is find a topic that's a WIFM topic, the what's in it for me. And so if Conrad, you've recently, I don't know, I'm seeing on TikTok all these sourdough bread makers, hobbyists in my
Yeah.
feed these days. Or if you're a pickleball star all of a sudden, start asking questions about those topics. That's the selfish what's in it for me. If you've read a book, tell the AI to act like an author and have a conversation with it. And those personal interest topics is the thing that spurs the creativity and innovation for how to actually use this chatbot in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the aha moment, the time to wow. I worked for this company called Play AI. They were conversational AI. They were acquired by Meta, and the time to wow was the biggest thing when it would replace entire call centers, but when somebody and people were hesitant, right? But when they picked up the phone and they dialed in and they heard how conversational and
Yes.
how human sounding it was and how it could handle any
Yes.
oddball question, it was like, holy moly. All of a sudden, their minds are racing a million miles a minute. So do you think, I'm glad you mentioned conversational AI because I did not think churches were even talking about it because I was working in my bubble. I thought this was just enterprise and IT. What are some have churches been using it already? Oh, is that something you're proposing?
Yeah, I mean, conversation voice AI versus chatbot conversations.
Like an agent? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you have tools like Tapos.app. which is a great tool where you can train it on trusted sources in the knowledge base. And it basically, I think, has a hybrid RAG model that has a chatbot that you can put publicly on your website or have an internal tool. So, for example, you might have something that your small group leaders might be able to then surface the questions that come up in our weekly small group discussions where the pastor doesn't have the time to reply on demand. In our world of asynchronous communication, that might take a day or two or a week to respond to a thoughtful question. And now if you
Yeah.
trained the tool like Tapos on all of your sermons that you've preached over the last 20 years, and then you have some theological greats that you respect and other pastors that you respect that you put in there. I think they have the Bible Project. You can put all the Bible Project content in there. You can, if I loved Tim Keller of Redeemer Presbyterian Church, I respect him and his teaching. You put all that in there. And now you have the confidence to release a tool like that to a small group leader unaided in an unsupervised manner that you feel like, okay, it's going to limit itself to those trusted sources. That to me, I think is exciting to a lot of pastors.
Is fascinating. Yeah, I think, and even cloning the voice, and they could just call in the home group leader and ask questions any time of the day, or text. That's pretty fascinating. It could even be so much more like church websites could be much more interactive. Like, hey, what time is Sunday service,
Yes.
as opposed
Yes.
to,
I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit. Can you put
yeah,
all of your church docs in there and
yeah,
then have the conversational chatbot, whether it's video, voice, or text? And is there childcare for the 11 a.m.
yeah,
service? How long does the service last? What should I
interesting.
wear? Is there parking? Like all those FAQ questions is something you can easily train a chatbot. And now it's
Yeah,
helping someone who's checking at 1 a.m. because it takes that much time to put the kids to bed and get your work done. And then you're finally thinking about the weekend and like, well, is there a 12
yeah,
p.m. service? Like what, all those questions could be answered in a
yeah,
much more dynamic way today.
yeah, absolutely. Are you a product person as well, or you are just an advocate? Do you like Tapos? Are you part of that, or
Product person, am I on a startup team? Like, no, I'm not part of Tapos. I mean, I think there's a bunch of tools and products out there that I'm a fan of. Tapos is one. You mentioned Opus. I think Sermon Shots is a
yeah,
great tool that is doing the same thing, but also lets you repurpose long form content in other ways than just video. And they do live translation now. You can create devotionals, all that kind of stuff in Sermon Shots. And so I've been building partnerships. Like I'm vibe coding and I have some other products
nice.
on myself, but we've been focusing mostly on education, right?
Yeah,
The big hairy goal of this adventure in this chapter right now, I'm thinking is, depending on who you talk to, is there 300,000 churches, 400,000 churches in North America? But can we get to 5% of churches in the next 5 years with some formal education for the pastor and for the staff? And so we've launched courses like ChatGPT for Churches.com or repurposeyoursermon.com. And we're just getting ready to launch AI Policies Made Simple.com. And so can we inspire 1,000 pastors in this next 2 years to go through the program and develop an actual contextualized AI policy for their organization? So that's a dream. That's an objective. That's the mission
yeah.
right now for our team.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad because I think you'll be too distracted being product and teaching as well, But so how do people find you? And do you obviously you travel all across the country, but people are searching, are people searching for you or they don't know you exist even and they just happily stumble upon you? Do they know it's a problem and they need to find you? Like that's might be what your biggest hurdle is. People don't understand it's a problem they need a solution for even,
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. I don't know how people find me, but there's a lot of people. So I do speak extensively across the country, or I'm actually going to Toronto, Canada tomorrow. I'm going to be in Chicago the next week. And so I think the exposure point is there. I think people know as a resource, but I don't think visibility is not something that you can get to 100%. People are
Yeah,
searching. People stumble
yeah,
across the resources, the publishing, and all that kind of stuff. And so again, against that call of the 5% over 5 years, I've been trying to get on many channels and communities, etc. We were featured in the New York Times earlier this year. I was just in the Dispatch this last week. I think there's growing interest
Yeah.
in the area.
Yeah.
And naturally speaking, it's just one of those places that people are interested in what churches are doing and how are they being resourced today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's pretty easy to find anybody who's searching, because you have AI for church leaders. I mean,
Yes.
it's pretty difficult to miss. It's literally in the search word, right? I mean, it's killer that you got that
Yeah.
domain.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the last question for you, Kenny, where do you think it is eh, where do you think it is trending? Like, I know we're end of this year, maybe this time next year, right? How do you think like an AI? What would a church look like if they just adopted AI a lot? I'm hesitant to say 100% because that just seems like a machine, and I'm right. And that's the mental picture people have. This is where's the heart in my church? But maybe next year by this time, a modern church who's not afraid to take that bold
Yeah.
leap, how are they operating?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you will see those churches in growth mode. It will tangibly contribute to the growth of the ministry, and it depends on what their objectives are. And so, if it is, we want to be a discipling church, right? That we want to invest in making disciples that make disciples, then that is something that I think you'll see acceleration on, because you'll have personalized disciples or pathways. You'll have content that actually can be put into interactive modalities that you've never had the ability to do before. You'll be able to aggregate communities within your zip code and figure out what their felt needs are and map the content to that, right? So there's all these things that would happen. If it's numerical growth, I think on the communications and the marketing front, there's all these things that can happen. If it's on the financial growth side, I think executive pastors have tools now that are able to do things. I'll just give you one quick example. In one of our live workshops, we had a pastor upload giving data. We anonymized the giving data. We put it into a spreadsheet. And then we had AI figure out what the average giving is per individual for a regular giver. So we identified, I think it was if they give more than 15 times in a given year, then that's counted as a regular giver. And of that subset, what's the average giving unit per person? And then take the last quarter, last 3 months, and compare that average giving number, and then figure out who dropped their giving more than 75% in the last 3 months. Because what happened if their giving all of a sudden evaporates? There's something that was the reason. And either
Mm.
they had some issue with a topic that you preached on and have some big disagreement with you, and all of a sudden they pull out their money, or what's more likely to happen? It's a ministry moment. So it might be conflict at home with their spouse. It might be
Fascinating.
a health issue. It might be something that's happening at their workplace, their job. It might be something that's disruptive of that's going on in their life. And so now that small subset that you've identified with AI then allows you to be the church. So you can then surgically figure out, okay, Connor's having an issue with his giving. What's behind it? So is he on a volunteer team? Is he on a small group? Is he? What list is he on? Right? Who did he meet last with at our staff or volunteer level? You could find that out in your church management software, right? And then send someone to meet with you, take you out to coffee, have a meal, and explore, because there's probably something that you would surface if the church was the church in that moment. And so those are the types of things that I think AI is going to just be able to do more of in every single department of the
Yeah.
church. And when you
Yeah.
have that firing on all cylinders, there's nothing that's going to happen other than your church is going to flourish. You're going to be able to serve more. You're going to be able to reach more people. You're going to be able to go deeper with more people. And I think that's what we all want at the end of the day.
Kenny, I love that example because I think you helped me a little bit as well, because especially when you started talking about the finances and tithing, I was like, oh no, is this where we're heading to? Like, you did not. But then you turned it around, right? Saying that how the uncomfortable topic of tithing actually led to a heart moment. If by looking at that
Yes.
and reaching out to a human, as opposed to like, it's all just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's not a business transaction. It's not a profit and loss aspect. But AI is helping turn maybe.
it opens up the idea of we can use these leading indicators that AI is going to help us surface. Now, could you do this without AI? Absolutely. Could you do it manually? Absolutely. Are pastors doing this on a regular basis? My guess is most pastors not even doing that one example I gave you. Shouldn't we all have, if we all had that information, would you not want to reach out to the 1, 10, 20 people in your church that's struggling right now and sit with them and be present and actually see, is there a way that you can actually pastor to them in the moment that they need the relationship that they wanted and developed in the church? And so I think that's the question we have right now is, are you going to be fearful of AI and say we need to compartmentalize it and kill it? Or are you going to look at it in a way that says, what's the best way we can steward the gift that God has given us for his glory and for his people?
Amazing, Kenny. I think you sold me on that example. You turned it around, but I appreciate you, and I think whoever's listening, I think that part might have softened the hearts a little bit. So, Kenny, before we go, I really appreciate your time. I know, yeah, I know how busy you are, and I know how crazy your schedule is, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. But before we go, um, please send me links when we are done. And also, if you want to plug anything, your conference is coming up anywhere, and your websites, how to find you, love to do that if you want to plug that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm easy to find on the internet. If you search my name, Kenny Jahng, you'll see me in searches everywhere. I love connecting with church leaders and learning what you're doing with AI, what the questions you have about AI is. If you wanted to find us in the community, I would say that the square one would be find peers that are interested in learning and sharing about AI. And so we started a Facebook group called AI for Church Leaders and Pastors. There's a couple of groups, and we're the largest one out there, AI for Church Leaders and Pastors. You can join the group. We're on our way to 7,500 people. You'll see examples being shared. You'll see questions being shared. And more importantly, you're seeing questions being answered by other pastors in the same roles that get it and that want to learn together. And so you can find me in our Facebook group, or you can find me online. And I think that's the number one recommendation I would say. Start with connecting with other peers that are trying to explore, this is a gift from God. How might we use it in our own context?
Absolutely. Kenny, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Safe travels.